What happens when a teenager raised on private jets and platinum cards crosses paths with a 90-year-old war hero sitting quietly on a memorial bench? Tuesday morning. The courtroom doors open and in walks Bryce Montgomery, 18 years old. Designer sneakers worth more than a month's salary. A platinum watch flashing under courtroom lights. And a face so sure the world owes him something. He's not here to listen. He's here to get it over with. His phone is still in hand. His tennis lesson is at 2. To him, this hearing is an inconvenience, like a parking ticket. But today, he's about to face Judge Frank Caprio, and sitting quietly in the back row is someone Bryce never noticed. Someone he knocked to the ground 5 days ago. Mr. Harold Winston, 90 years old, Korean War veteran, high school math teacher, widower. The man Bryce shoved to the pavement was visiting a bench carved with his late wife's name. That single act, violent, careless, and cruel, was more than a physical assault. It was an assault on memory, on sacrifice, on dignity. And what happened next became one of the most emotional, talked-about moments ever seen in Judge Caprio's courtroom. It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon. The sun was warm over Memorial Park. The ducks floated gently across the pond, and Harold Winston sat on a weathered bench reading from a small book of poetry, his late wife's favorite. That bench wasn't just a place to rest, it was sacred. It bore the name Margaret Rose Winston, etched into bronze, 63 years of marriage. Tuesdays were always their day, even after she passed. Harold came here every Tuesday, same hour, same bench, same ritual. He was not bothering anyone. But Bryce Montgomery didn't see it that way. Bryce arrived on a skateboard, fast, loud, careless, with the energy of someone who's never had to answer for anything. He saw Harold sitting there, and instead of respect, he saw a problem. That bench, Bryce said, was his spot, the one with the best view, where he usually chilled between skating runs. He didn't ask, he demanded. When Harold offered to share the bench, Bryce scoffed. "Old people like you shouldn't be out here," he sneered, "taking up space other people actually use." Then he pushed him, 2 hands, full force. Harold fell backwards hard onto the concrete path. His walker went flying, his glasses shattered, his head struck the pavement, but Bryce didn't stop. He kicked the walker aside like trash. Then he looked down at the bloodied man and said, "Maybe next time move faster, or just stay home where you belong." Witnesses screamed. Someone called 911. A young woman helped Harold sit up holding a napkin to his bleeding head. Another man took a photo of Bryce, speeding away smirking. But the worst damage wasn't the bruises. It wasn't even the cracked dedication plaque on the bench. It was what Bryce shattered with his words. Harold Winston had served in the Korean War. He'd survived brutal winter's enemy fire and 11 months in a prisoner of war camp. He'd built a life, raised 5 children, taught math to generations of students, and still volunteered with homeless veterans every Saturday. All of that, reduced to useless old man by a teenager who didn't even know his name. Bryce went home that day, posted a video to his private story. Caption, "Old man went down like a Jenga tower." But the cameras in Memorial Park caught everything. And now 5 days later, those images are Exhibit A in a courtroom where money, youth, and attitude won't protect him. Tuesday morning. Bryce Montgomery entered the courtroom with the same swagger he brought into the park. A designer hoodie pulled over his perfectly styled hair. Sneakers worth more than most people's rent. And that platinum watch always gleaming, always ticking like time owed him something. He didn't look nervous. He didn't even look interested. Phone in hand, thumb scrolling, a tennis lesson at 2 o'clock. That's what mattered. Not the trial, not the charges, not the man he'd shoved into the pavement. Judge Frank Caprio watched quietly, his hands folded, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke calm but firm. "Mr. Montgomery, put that device away and stand when addressing this court. Legal proceedings require attention and basic human courtesy." Bryce looked up annoyed. "Seriously, whatever." He slid the phone into his pocket with a theatrical sigh. "Can we just make this quick? I have plans." Gasps rippled through the gallery. An elderly woman shook her head. A young man in a veteran's jacket muttered, "Unbelievable." Next to Bryce, his attorney Sandra Kellerman gently touched his arm, urging him to show restraint. He pulled away. Judge Caprio opened the case file. He read slowly, letting the words settle like bricks. "You are charged with assault on an elderly person, destruction of public property, verbal harassment of a military veteran, and disturbing the peace." He paused. "These are not minor infractions. They are serious crimes with real consequences." Bryce rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on," he said, voice rising. "This whole thing is overblown. The guy was in my way with his walker. I barely nudged him and he collapsed. It's not my fault old people are fragile. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Then from the gallery, a voice. A gasp, then whispers, then outrage. Veterans shook their heads in disbelief. Someone said, "That man's a war hero." Judge Caprio didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. According to police reports and multiple eyewitnesses, he said you pushed Mr. Winston to the ground with force. You then kicked aside his walker, damaged a memorial bench dedicated to his late wife, and referred to him as, and I quote, "a useless geezer who should stay home and stop wasting everyone's time." Is that accurate? Bryce gave a lazy shrug. Look, I was just trying to skate. He was hogging the best bench. I asked him to move, and he ignored me. I gave him a little push so he'd notice me. Big deal. Kellerman stood quickly. Your Honor. My client regrets the incident. He's an honor student with no prior offenses. Judge Caprio held up a hand. Counselor, I will determine what's relevant. Then he turned back to Bryce. Did you tell Mr. Winston that elderly veterans are worthless drains on taxpayers? Bryce's mouth curled in a smirk. I mean something like that. It's not exactly untrue, is it? They're always talking about wars from like 50 years ago. Meanwhile, people like me are out here paying their Social Security. You could feel the room shift. Not just anger, disgust. Even his own attorney couldn't hide her dismay. Judge Caprio's voice dropped. Mr. Montgomery, I want you to meet the man you assaulted. He looked toward the gallery. Mr. Winston, would you please come forward? And from the back row, a frail figure stood. A walker, a slow step, a quiet dignity. Harold Winston made his way forward, not with weakness, but with purpose. His cap bore the words, Korean War Veteran. His ribbons were faded, but proud. He didn't look at Bryce. He looked straight ahead, toward justice. Harold Winston stood steady behind the witness stand. His walker rested beside him, the ribbons fluttering slightly under the air vents. His voice was thin, fragile with age, but each word landed like a stone. Your Honor, he began. I was sitting on that bench because it meant something. He looked down, gathering his breath. That bench was dedicated to my wife, Margaret Rose Winston. She passed away last spring. We were married 63 years. Every Tuesday we used to sit on that bench together. After she died, I kept going, because it still felt like she was there. You could hear people swallowing tears. I was reading one of her favorite poems when this young man approached. He didn't ask me to move. He told me I was in his way. Said people my age shouldn't be in public parks. Said I was wasting everyone's time. Harold steadied himself. I offered to share the bench. He said no. Then he shoved me, hard. The words hung in the air. I hit the ground. My head struck the sidewalk. My glasses broke. I couldn't see. I was bleeding. I couldn't find my balance. He paused, his voice faltering. While I was trying to get up, he kicked my walker aside and said, You should move faster if you want to matter. The room was silent, except for one woman in the gallery, sobbing quietly. Bryce rolled his eyes. Oh, come on, he muttered. This is so dramatic. I barely touched the guy. He went down like a tissue in the wind. Maybe if he's that fragile, he shouldn't be outside. The words didn't land like arrogance anymore. They landed like tragedy. Judge Caprio's jaw tightened. I warned you, Mr. Montgomery. Do not interrupt this witness again. Harold didn't flinch. He went on. The physical pain, that fades. But what he said, what he meant, stays. He looked directly at Bryce for the first time. You told me I was worthless. You said, my 50 years of marriage, my service in Korea, my time teaching math to high schoolers, and my work with veterans meant nothing. His hands trembled slightly, but he didn't waver. You didn't just knock me down, you trampled everything I stood for. Judge Caprio looked at Harold with solemn respect. Thank you, Mr. Winston. Please return to your seat. As Harold walked back to the gallery, slow but proud, no one spoke. Then came the moment no one expected. Judge Caprio stood. That doesn't happen often. His voice filled the room. Mr. Montgomery, do you know who that man is? Bryce gave a shrug. Just some old guy, I guess. The courtroom exhaled like a body hit in the gut. No, Caprio said. He is a war hero. He enlisted at your age 18, fought in Korea, was captured, spent 11 months in a POW camp, tortured, starved, forgotten. He came home with scars on his body and never once used them for pity. He stepped down from the bench, walked closer to Bryce. And you, Mr. Montgomery, you've spent 18 years consuming your family's wealth, scrolling your phone, treating service and sacrifice as inconvenience. Bryce tried to speak. I didn't know. That's exactly the point, Caprio cut in. You never asked. You never wondered. You saw wrinkles and assumed irrelevance. A long pause. Let me make something clear, Caprio said, voice cold now. Even if Mr. Winston had never served, even if he had never taught. Even if all he did was love one woman for 63 years and sit quietly on a park bench, he would still deserve your respect. The gallery was still. Harold Winston sat quietly, eyes lowered. Bryce looked shaken finally. For the first time in this trial, the boy stopped talking and started listening. Judge Caprio returned to his bench, opened the sentencing folder, and looked directly at Bryce Montgomery. "Mr. Montgomery," he said quietly, "your attorney asked the court to consider a fine and some counseling." He looked up. "I will not be doing that." A flicker of hope crossed Bryce's face, misread entirely. "I will not reduce your crime to money. I will not pretend a check from your father can repair what you destroyed." He leaned forward, because what you shattered was not just a plaque, but the dignity of a man who gave his life to this country. Bryce shifted in his seat. "You will pay an $8,000 fine," Caprio declared, "but half of that will be stayed contingent on your performance of a restorative program designed for entitled young offenders who harm elderly veterans." He held up a list. "Here are your conditions. First, you will complete 500 hours of hands-on volunteer service at the Providence Veterans Home. No paperwork, no shortcuts. You will assist with meals, bathing, physical therapy, and companionship. You will serve because you need to learn what service means." Bryce's mouth opened slightly, but Caprio continued. "Second, you will write 3 letters by hand. One to Mr. Winston detailing exactly what you did, what you learned, and why it was wrong. One to Margaret Winston, apologizing for desecrating the memory of their love. And one to the entire veteran community, every man and woman at the Veterans Home who deserves more than your silence. Third, you will research, write, and present a 5,000-word paper on the Korean War, focusing on POW experiences and post-war contributions by veterans. You will present that paper to your high school history class and at 3 local senior centers. Fourth, you will attend weekly counseling on empathy, privilege, and anger management for 8 months. Your therapist will report directly to this court. Fifth, you will personally restore the memorial bench and its surroundings, not by hiring landscapers, by working. Sixth, you will spend 1 day per week for the next 8 months listening to the life stories of elderly veterans with no phone, no distractions, no interruptions. Finally, you will keep a journal daily reflecting on what you see, what you learn, and how it changes you. Bryce's voice cracked. "That's a lot. I have school I have." Judge Caprio cut in. "Mr. Winston had school too, then he volunteered for war. You're being asked to show respect. Not by saying it, but by living it." He closed the folder. "Complete every condition sincerely and the stayed fine will be forgiven. Treat this like a chore, and I'll reinstate the full penalty and charge you with contempt. Do you understand?" Bryce nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Caprio leaned back. "This court is adjourned." 8 months later, same courtroom, different Bryce. Gone were the designer sneakers. Gone was the swagger, the platinum watch. In their place, a plain shirt, worn shoes, and eyes that had seen things money couldn't buy. Bryce stood taller but quieter, more present, more real. Judge Caprio flipped through the thick folder of reports. "Mr. Montgomery," he began, "your supervisors at the Providence Veterans Home describe your work as consistent and sincere." He paused. "Your letters were heartfelt. Your essay was thoughtful. Your counseling reports show true growth in empathy." He looked up. "But most importantly, Mr. Winston sent a letter." The room grew still. "He praises your dedication to the memorial restoration. He says you listened, helped others. In his words, not mine, carried yourself like someone who finally understood the cost of peace." Judge Caprio closed the folder. "Tell me, Mr. Montgomery, what have you learned?" Bryce swallowed hard. His voice didn't shake, but it was heavy. "Your Honor, 8 months ago, I thought being young and rich meant I mattered more. I was wrong." He looked at the gallery at the veterans seated quietly listening. "I learned that true strength doesn't shout. It endures. That respect isn't claimed, it's earned. That service doesn't end when the uniform comes off." He blinked. "I can't undo what I did, but I can choose every day to live differently." A pause. Then, "To listen more, to judge less, to stand up not above but beside." Caprio nodded slowly. "You entered this courtroom as an entitled child. You leave as a young man who understands that character is not inherited, it is built." He smiled gently. "The state fine is remitted. This case is closed." Then he added, almost like a father to a son, "But remember, character isn't a destination. It's a daily choice. Keep making the right ones." As the gavel fell, Bryce turned to leave. Outside in the hallway, he found Harold Winston waiting. Not with anger, not with pride, just quiet presence. Bryce walked over, extended a hand. Mr. Winston, I still don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to say thank you for giving me a second chance to be someone better. Harold looked him in the eyes. Apologies are just words, son, but action is how you show you mean them. He took Bryce's hand. Make your life worthy of the men who never came home. Bryce nodded, holding back tears. I will. Because in a world where arrogance is loud, dignity is quiet, where wealth is flashy, but wisdom is eternal, and where justice, when led with compassion, can still transform the heart of the ungrateful into someone worth becoming,